Bill.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I just want to advise you that I'll be splitting my time graciously with the member from Foothills. You're welcome. I want to, I want to turn this back into what we started at this morning, and it's a motion, an Opposition Day motion, that is not an indictment or an endorsement on the plan to price carbon, as the Liberals say, or as we like to say, tax, because, Madam Speaker, a tax is a tax is a tax. You can't hide it any other way. But this is a motion that deals with openness and transparency, the very foundation of which the Liberal government ran the last election on. The member from Carleton asked for information with respect to the pricing of the planned carbon tax that the Liberals were looking to implement. There was some information that came back, but the information on the cost was in fact redacted. And I somewhat chuckled in disbelief the day that the member from Carleton received that information to see that it was actually whited out. So the government, the Finance Department and the government know what the cost is. They know what the impact is to Canadians, but they're just simply not sharing that information. And that flies in the face of holding your hand over your heart, speaking to Canadians during an election campaign, talking about a Canada where better is possible, where we're going to be more transparent, more open, more accountable. And for the fun of it, Madam Speaker, I actually went back to the Liberal platform and looked at what they said. And they said, together we can restore a sense of trust in our democracy. Greater openness and transparency are fundamental to accomplishing this. A Liberal government will implement all of these proposals and go even further with new initiatives and expand Canadians' access to information. Well, they'll expand access to information, Madam Speaker, only when it suits them and it doesn't speak to the truth of the issue. And the truth of the issue is that this carbon tax that the Liberals are looking to implement across the country is going to cost Canadians. Now, in question period yesterday, I asked a question, and it related to the Barrie chapter of the Canadian Association of Retired People. And they recently had a seminar this weekend, and the basis of the seminar was heat or eat. That's how dire the situation has become for seniors in this country, particularly with respect to energy prices in Ontario. And, when seniors are celebrating their golden years of retirement after contributing so much to Canada, to our economy, it's awfully disheartening, Madam Speaker, when the prospect of a carbon tax is going to fall on them, and they're going to have to pay even more to heat their homes, even more for energy, and even more for everything else, quite frankly. And so in my riding of Barrie Innisfil, there's a seniors community called Sandy Cove Estates. It's a 3,600 strong senior community, and oftentimes at night you'll drive through that community and see lights off, because for many of those seniors in that community, the reality is they are making a choice between heating and eating. And I know the member from York Simcoe knows that area well. There are good people who have worked very, very hard their whole lives, Madam Speaker, and many veterans as well that live in that community, many first responders, and they're having extreme difficulties right now in Ontario paying their high energy costs. And so to add a carbon tax on top of that is just unimaginable. And again, I said earlier, I don't want to make this an indictment or an endorsement on carbon taxes. You know, when I was a city councillor, I did my part, made decisions to invest, to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, whether it was spending $11 million on LED lights, investing in LEED certified buildings. There are things that we can do, and we understand as Conservatives that, as the Liberals say often, that the economy and the environment do go hand in hand, but they shouldn't be adverse or adversity of each other, in adversity or in contradiction of each other, Madam Speaker. And so there are many things that we can do. And indeed, not being part of the previous government, I know that there were lots of things that were done. I look at some of the stories. Jim Fraser, who has a small bungalow in Collingwood, Ontario, recently opened up his hydro bill. It was $700. Dave Purdon of Muskoka Meats got a hydro bill of $1,700. And you know what he had to do to pay for it? He had to slash his prices of his inventory by 50% in order just to pay his hydro bill. So when we talk about adding a carbon tax on top of that, how are these small and medium-sized businesses actually going to function? Another one, the butcher shop, Lawrence Vindham, who's a friend of mine. He's actually in the member from Barrie Springwater, Oro-Medonte. He had to remove large freezers from his business because he couldn't afford his hydro bill anymore. So, you know, he said actually, he was quoted in the paper saying that he got chest pains when he opened up his bill. Talk about the stress of that, Madam Speaker. So, you know, one thing we do know in the information that the member from Carleton received is that the proposed carbon tax, as stated in the Ministry of Finance report, will have a cascading effect on our economy. Economist Trevor Tombe provides some estimates on the cost of carbon pricing in Canada, and he did this in Maclean's magazine in October of 2016. He said the direct cost to Canadians annually will be roughly between $1,250 and $2,500. And so those direct costs to homeowners include gasoline, home heating, electricity, and there's indirect costs as well to households that include natural gas increases, food production and distribution, public transportation, shelter costs, services, clothing. And he also said that further cost to household increases when revenues from carbon pricing are not channeled back to households. Some provincial governments just can't help themselves. And I know, we've heard the argument all day that it'll be up to the provincial governments to decide. Well, when you've got a situation like Ontario where there are billions and billions of dollars in debt, a lot of that is going to go towards paying or servicing that debt, any revenue that's generated, Madam Speaker. Let's not fool ourselves here. It's not going to go back to residents, homeowners, and businesses. And in fact, the Canadian Taxpayers Federation had to go to the UN, information that was provided to the UN to figure out just how much it would cost Canadians with respect to carbon taxes. And you know, one of the things that the member from Carleton said this morning, we are representation by population. We are the ones that represent our residents. And if we can't get the information from the government, how can I go back to my residents in Barrie Innisfil or Foothills or Saskatoon, and how can we tell them how much this is going to cost if the government, in fact, won't release that information? Now, I gave you some examples before, Madam Speaker, of some of the businesses that are struggling in the current environment, and they'll have to absorb the impacts of the carbon taxes. But of course, how do they absorb those impacts, Madam Speaker? They pass them on to consumers. So already struggling seniors, already struggling middle-class families, those working hard to join it, will have to pay for the Liberal carbon tax. But again, we don't know what they're going to have to pay, because the government will not release that information. And again, that's the basis of what today's debate is all about. Release the information. If it's so bad, the member from Winnipeg North, if this is so bad, why not release it? Why redact it? Why black it out? Because they're not happy with the information, Madam Speaker. That's the answer to the question. They know that Canadians will not be happy with the information. Now, with respect to the impact on businesses, I have a business in my riding, LEI Electronics. It's run by Lionel Lalone, partnered with Mark Satchu, and they do some great things when it comes to creating carbon neutral or zero carbon products. They have an alkaline battery that is carbon neutral that they sell around the world. And, one of the concerns, and I had them in at a roundtable, and they actually wrote me a letter, Madam Speaker, dated February 23rd, talking about companies who are carbon neutral certified. Think of the ridiculousness of this. They're carbon neutral certified, and yet they will be subject to a Liberal carbon tax. They're doing everything they can. Every bit of investment that they make in their company is to create carbon neutrality. They're actually going to have to pay for this. So finally, Madam Speaker, I want to say that the cost of Gerald Butts, Kathleen Wynne, Catherine McKenna, and Justin Trudeau green energy taxes over about $1,000 to every senior at the age of 65. Seniors will have to make decisions every day to be healthy or be warm, or have a full tummy, or to visit their grandchildren that live far away. I am receiving a tremendous amount of email correspondence about this carbon tax, and I will say, if I can't answer the question because I don't have the information, how are the Liberals answering those questions to their constituents? Madam Speaker, thank you.